What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's the good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and we're finally getting some Sunday football soon for the New York Jets, where the wins and losses actually matter. And Glenn's debut is right around the corner for us, right? There's a lot to love about this particular game. There's a lot to hate as well if you don't particularly enjoy watching potential low-scoring affairs, but I find it fascinating when you look at just the makeup of both of these rosters, what you would expect the game plans to look like, some of the matchup details. But when I've envisioned this matchup between these two teams, you have maybe your upper echelon version of, let's just say this, right? For all teams that envision having an elite rushing attack, and then you're talking about playing the quick passing game, but more so taking a step back from that, just a methodical passing game, chewing up clock, and ultimately kind of playing keep away ball. You have a team like maybe the Chargers, right? That's kind of the pinnacle of that. Excellent quarterback. Again, generally speaking, top tier rushing attack. You have the offensive line in order, and you have your primary wide receiver one, and then you kind of have these minimal or unknown or mid-tier weapons that follow after that. And generally, you have a tight end room that you feel really good about. If the Chargers are in that, top 2 or 3 teams of that build, then you have a team like the Steelers that would either be in that lower tier of the top teams, or you would just consider them the middle tier. And then the New York Jets as a team just starting this journey and just starting to figure out the pieces and answers, we would be the new face, right? We are the third tier of that team, but there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of upside with us, and you can make this argument for any team in the NFL right now going into week 1. But just when you get the feeling of what we've done to build up the offensive line, and the AVT injury definitely sucks, but the investments there, you look at the 3-headed attack in the backfield, you look at Garrett Wilson, and then you have Justin Fields as a augment of the rushing game, and hopefully he can show enough of either deep passing, or he's been able to improve based on what we've seen between the Steelers and what Engstrom has been able to do to help develop him up behind the scenes, since we had a very vanilla offense for the most part under Justin Fields' guidance. Sky's the limit here for us. So there's some things I want to highlight here, right? Before we talk about anything like matchups or, key numbers that are out there or anything like that. And I'll keep this relatively straightforward, right? It's not going to be an in-depth, player profile for all of these guys or anything like that, but just some of the things that I've seen as a whole. And then, of course, some things I've been able to dig up that are going to be intriguing to know. But as of recent news, right, injury report coming out for Friday, there wasn't anything major. Aaron Glenn gave the sign off that essentially everyone from the New York Jets side, outside of Elijah Vera Tucker, healthy and or at least has no concerns that there's going to be an impact for that week 1 status against the Steelers. On the Steelers side of things, I don't recall there being many notable players that have an injury that's going to be a cause of concern, right? I think like Skylar Thompson, one of the backup quarterbacks, is on there. Nate Herbig, one of their edge rushers or outside linebackers, I believe. And that's really like some of the only ones that come to mind immediately. Outside of that, not too much. And maybe Troy Fautanu, but I think he's had a relatively healthy last week or two, or at least has been able to turn the things around heading into this game. But from the Jet side of things, when you look at things outside of the injury report, there was a final last minute tweak or kind of game planning, if you will, from the New York Jets that went underrated. And this is one of the things that I continue to go out and praise Aaron Glenn for, and kind of his leadership and innovation when it comes to aspects like this. The Steelers employ I was going to say left-handed, a left-legged punter, I guess. He kicks with his left. And so we brought in a punter to work out. We gave Austin McNamara the job very early in this competition against Kai Kroger, I want to say it was. And he had a pretty elite preseason, by the way. So one of the things that I find really intriguing about this is that generally you would probably just looked. There's going to be differences, right? Imagine a left arm quarterback is going to be the same thing with a kicker. So different spin to the ball, different area of the field that they're probably going to consistently look to target, etc., etc. Bounce maybe even being slightly different. The kicker that we brought in was also a left-legged kicker, so we essentially got at least the one practice, from my understanding, to go out there and give Xavier Gibson an understanding of what that'll look like on game day. And this is the stuff that is really ingenious, right? For one, you do get at least a little bit more intel on another guy out there just in case you catch a punter injury or anything of the sort. But to be able to go out there and at least try to mimic, because you don't have that on your current roster or on your practice squad, what that would look like. Fantastic job by him, right? Really leaving no stone unturned when it comes to having the ultimate game plan for all phases of the game, offense, defense, special teams here. So definitely want to applaud him for that. But when you look at what this game will look like, I talked about the makeup of both teams and kind of what ideally it's going to look like, right? But slow-paced offense on both sides, because you're going to see a ton of rushing attempts on both sides. And it's going to be time of possession battle, right? It's really whoever can maximize on big plays, or whoever ends up maybe having the final possession of the game. Potentially, I think you could end up looking at this being a one-score possession lead the entirety of the match. Going up even 10 potentially could be a stretch. Potentially a ton of field goals that you're talking about happening here as well. So with Aaron Rodgers, from our experience, for example, we know that he was very methodical, took his time getting to the line of scrimmage. We saw a ton of delay of games and different things of that nature because of that, right? Lack of motions, all manner of sorts. You would, unless his mindset is completely changed, and with Arthur Smith being the OC there, who also would prefer to have a heavy rushing oriented attack, you imagine you're going to see much of the same stuff. And then it's just going to be a difference of how well can he execute with the pieces that they have around him. Now, some things to note for the Steelers. Tomlin, right? Well-coached team throughout his entire, I think he's going on 19 seasons in the NFL or something insane. 11-6 and 1 record with Mike Tomlin in season openers. Crazy. So essentially he's winning about 3/4 of his game. Obviously a little shy of that, but very, very impressive nonetheless, right? To be able to have a team that, generally speaking, comes out of the gate fairly strong is something that's a very underrated aspect, right? You look, for example, comparison's sake here, many analysts will tell you if the Cincinnati Bengals go 0-2, for example, many people are willing to write their season off right then and there, which isn't crazy work when you look at it, kind of how the last couple of years have gone for the Bengals. Of course, injuries and all that stuff aside, but still, it gives you a picture of why this is going to be important. Second thing, the forced 3 and out. 34.6% of the Steelers' opponents' possessions were able to force the 3 and out for. This made them the 4th best team at being able to do this last year. And we know how strong that defense looked last year, right? And it almost doesn't necessarily matter whether Cam Hayward is there or whether Watt is there per se, but they can go out there and they're going to get the job done. That's just what you're getting with Tomlin. Thirdly, 5th fewest yards per rush attempt last season at 4.1. Now, I loved seeing a couple of the X Factor articles that went out. You know, they do a great job of giving us some in-depth numbers and stuff of what this looks like. There is going to be an opportunity here with Cam Hayward specifically, and this is where really the conversation starts from the Steelers side of things, because Cam Hayward has been fighting for some kind of contract extension the entirety of this offseason. Now, with many of the other players that we've seen doing the same thing this year, and when you're especially talking about more of the upper tier 30 plus year old guys, some of those teams have been able to work out agreements where they just sweeten the pot for the current year. But with Cam Hayward being a longtime Steeler, that may not be a suitable route for him either. Now, when he's on the field, right, all pro, obviously elite in both facets, pass and rush game. And this is a dramatic difference in looking at what the rushing defense is with Cam Hayward there versus what it is when he's off the field. And whether that's due to injury or any other number of events here, it is a key thing for us. If Cam Hayward ends up deciding he's going to continue to sit out or sit in, I guess, and ultimately not suit up for this game, it's a huge opportunity for the Jets. And even though I love the depth that you see on the Steelers defensive line, you can't really easily replicate or replace what Cam Hayward does for that defense, especially when you're rolling him out with the likes of a Watt being out there and a Highsmith and all of these other high caliber players, even if they're not, notable NFL household names at large. One of the other things I'll be watching as well, though, because we're going to have to throw the ball at some point for both sides. And I don't think anybody's going to dispute that Rodgers is more elite in his sleep as a passer than what Justin Fields would be. But based on what we saw last year, we know there's probably going to be an acclimation period here. There's going to be even potentially I think a lot of us looked at Garrett Wilson, and it didn't help that beat reporters and stuff made these comparisons in addition to Rodgers himself. Rodgers did a lot of Garrett Wilson to Devontae Adams comparisons. You're not getting that with Aaron Rodgers on the Steelers. His go-to guy is going to be DK Metcalf, and when you look at the litany of names behind him, your Calvin Austins, I just had a few of these names that come to mind. Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, and a few other names that are out there. You're not talking about number 2, even a number 3 threat that you're seriously concerned about, right? This is actually a pretty advantageous situation for Brandon Stevens, MC2, whoever we want to roll out as the fourth cornerback here. Azarie Thomas potentially. Huge opportunity for the rest of these guys to eat and really put up some early good film. I think Calvin Austin was their second leading receiver last year, and he put up just over about 500 yards, something like that. So you have the opportunity to clamp down everywhere else and force DK Metcalf to have to be that guy for him. And Sauce Gardner has performed pretty favorably against DK Metcalf. Over the last 2 matchups, I believe it was, in recent memory, 8 targets, 2 catches, 31 yards. That's it. I will take that day in and day out because DK Metcalf, I love being able to just randomly tune in and check out a couple of his highlights. When you look at what he can do in the deep game, it's going to be a concern at any given point. But also when you look at the rushing, or I guess his run blocking, there we go. You have a number of just weird instances on tape where he starts off strong base, he's driving a guy up the field, can't get anywhere, and then suddenly he turns into Jason and he's just holding a guy by the jersey and walking him to the sideline, and there's nothing that the defender can do about it. So with the emphasis on Sauce unlocking more of his ability to impact the game, which is going to come in the run department, and Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilkes has talked this up a lot about what truly makes up an elite defense for what he envisions. It's going to be interesting to see. Now, Sauce, in no world do I see him bullying DK Metcalf, but locking up in coverage for sure. And when it comes to being able to shed him and try to get in on this rushing attack, I think there is some opportunity. We saw the preseason game where he looked really, really good against the Packers, right? Essentially shut down a series all by himself between coverage and stepping up in the run game. So to be determined, but this is definitely a great week one litmus test for Sauce Gardner to really see how much of the corner or how much more of his game he's unlocked against a team that's going to be highly committed to the run game and does at least roll out a elite tier wide receiver one. From the Jets side, we talked about it. AVT, tough loss for us. You hate to see it, especially days before a critical game like this. And I think a lot of us are really expecting to see Tippmann slide over to right guard, Myers come in at center. And I do have a bit of concern with that. I think there are going to be a ton of elements from Detroit that are implemented for the New York Jets. And part of what really made them special, in my opinion, was having Frank Ragnow out there as center. The best center when it came to be able to pull off the wide zone rushing. Who was second behind him? I'm almost positive I recall this being Tippmann, or at least he was somewhere in that general area, 2, 3, 4, somewhere along the lines. But I believe Tippmann ended up being the second best center in that category. And so if he could replicate that same kind of success, that unlocks a number of different things you can do, especially with a better run blocking playbook, I would say, coming over with Engstrom than what we got to see with Nathaniel Hackett. Go back to Aaron Rodgers just dismantling the coaching staff and everything we want to do from a rushing attack standpoint. So obviously, you just expect leaps and bounds there in general, but I think we got to show that over the course of preseason, and there's plenty more that just seems like we were waiting to get to regular games. Aaron Glenn hasn't been, he hasn't been silent about the fact that he's looking to get as many edges as possible and not letting the opponents, get an idea for what they're planning to do until it's just unavoidable. So I'm really looking at a lot more creativity and a lot more different elements of what we pulled off in the rushing and the passing game. Now, AVT doesn't just hurt because he's a great player on this offensive line and what many people could say inarguably is the best offensive lineman for the New York Jets. It also sucks because Armand Mimbu, the rookie, is going to draw TJ Watt. And so it would have been immensely helpful to have AVT to his side, who we know is a strong player, not only in the rush game, but as a pass protector as well. Maybe you would have reduced the need to have to go out there and do chip blocks and different things of that element with your tight ends and running backs. Now, if we slide Tippmann over, it's veteran enough, even though he hasn't played a ton of games at guard. He at least has the experience from his rookie year and then, of course, some preseason action as well. But at least you still have a reliable component. Xavier Newman, if you wanted to move him up, you can argue the same. But, of course, you're not talking about starting tier caliber player at that point. But it should be justifiable enough to play, right? And I've kind of gone back and forth over this a lot. For example, I think I would risk throwing in an Xavier Newman there and then seeing if that doesn't work out. And if so, you can regroup, put Tippmann over to the guard spot, assuming this is going to be a close game all throughout, throw Danny Myers in at center and try to figure it out from there. But Myers concerns me a lot because we've seen him get used and abused a little bit, not only just in practice, by a number of different players like Leonard Taylor, for example. And we know we haven't brought out or we don't necessarily stock a ton of heavy DTs. Harrison Phillips and the likes are just coming on, Jawan Briggs. But it doesn't bode well with that some of these teams like the Steelers that are going to employ kind of your classic nose tackle may be able to go out there and have a field day against Myers. But we'll see. Again, average, definitely suitable center for us. Is a luxury that we're having him at the price that we're having right now, but we'll have to see what that actually looks like. And for what it's worth, now I don't want to, I've been trying to figure out the right way to go about this, but I can't forget the fact that Max Mitchell went out there and gave TJ Watts fits the last time that we've seen these teams match up. So I want to say that, Armand Mimbu's certainly going to have his hands full, but if Max Mitchell can do it, why can't Mimbu? And, there were some different things that happened, but there was a couple reps for sure where Max Mitchell was on an island and he was able to stall him out in the passing game specifically. So I'll be looking to see what that actually looks like. But just a thought that was out there. One of the final things I do want to chat about here is what an insider spoke about, and I was trying to recall where I seen this at. I don't remember the name of the podcast, but Zach Rosenblatt is on it, and whoever his co-host happens to be. I want to say it's just called the New York Jets Flight Podcast or something like that. But nonetheless, they brought on a Steelers insider, and he had some thoughts around what he witnessed in 2024 with Justin Fields and kind of what he expects, I guess, from a Jet standpoint with how we want to utilize him. And one of the intriguing things was that he even identified Fields was restricted. It wasn't an open, here's the playbook, we trust you, do what you can. It was a very vanilla-ish, protected, sheltered environment where they just wanted to ask him to do enough, right? Don't be a hindrance to the offense, but we're not asking you to win the game with your arm. We're not asking you to be the main reason we're winning the game. And more often than not, we're not even asking you to have to go out there and create explosives or utilize your legs or anything like that. It really felt like Fields was just that bridge until they could get Russell Wilson back healthy, and then they were going to be able to turn things over and open things back up. So even though he did definitely progress as a passer last year, it feels like there's a lot of meat on the bones here. So we'll see what happens. I'm just really excited nonetheless. And honestly, unless we just look absolutely atrocious, win, loss, draw, barring a blowout here, I'm going to be excited nonetheless about the results of week 1 because I do expect Aaron Glenn to roll out at least a well-coached team. So by that nature, I'm not expecting a blowout, right? But if we lose to the Steelers, I don't think anybody's going to be up in arms and say it's crazy unless it looked like a game that we should have won that we lost due to things like penalties and shooting ourselves in the foot and different things like that. But final thoughts here. I think the teams really kind of look the same on paper for the most part. And so it's going to be intriguing to see who's just more adept at being able to utilize their talent to figure things out. But the DB room specifically for both sides are going to probably be what I'm watching the most. Joey Porter, Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay over there, Sauce Gardner, MC2, Brandon Stevens here for us. It should be a really, really good day for just, lockdown coverage. And I think they definitely have the better safety tandem, at least as of now. But we'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think, though. Predictions, what you're looking for in the game, etc. I'll catch you guys again. Peace.